kind of partner view of FileWave that he's going to present.
Yeah, thank you guys, and hello everybody, also from my side. Hope you're doing fine. I do have the pleasure today to introduce you to Manu from our partner Allington from Belgium. We're really happy to have him here today, giving us a deeper view of FileWave's capabilities from someone with more than 20 years of experience, helping customers, helping companies all around the world. Yeah, I think that's enough. Welcome, Manu. Thank you for being here. Stage is yours.
Thank you, and hello, and thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself and my company. If my clicker starts working, yes. Allington is a division of Catena company and is devoted to the Apple platform. We are a small team based in Belgium, and we are operating all over the world. We help organizations of all sizes and across all verticals to integrate Mac and iPad into their environment. And we are focusing on flexible and efficient use of resources while always keeping the cybersecurity needs of those organizations into our mind. Our devotion to the Apple platform expresses itself into our membership of both the Apple Consultant Network and being one of the very few Apple training providers in our region. And last but not least, it was mentioned a couple of times, we are a FileWave partner for around 20 years. Please note that the logic I'm explaining today is applicable both for PC and for Mac. However, in our company, we focus on the Mac, but feel free to copy the logic to your Windows devices. We don't judge. If you want to get in touch, you can always reach out via one of the following channels. The slide will show up at the end again, and the slides will be available for download after the meeting as well. Should any questions arise during the presentation, feel free to post them in the chat. Jolie or one of the FileWave employees will gather them, and we will have some time definitely at the end to discuss those. Today, I want to tell you two stories. The first one may sound a little bit odd, but in fact, it's one of the most common questions we receive when we are integrating Mac into cross-platform environments. The second story, or in the second story, we will have a look at the different scenarios on how applications can be deployed, managed, and maintained during their life cycle. As an experienced FileWave admin, you probably know how important it is to have the right and powerful tools at your disposal. But sometimes company politics come into play and they limit your possibilities or potential. For instance, when politics require to register devices in Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager as it's called today. As I mentioned, my stories are true for both PC and Mac, and Endpoint Manager is often seen as the one solution to rule them all. I know we know better, but when you dive into it, you will soon discover Endpoint Manager's limits. Projects are put on hold, delayed, or worse of all, they are delivered in an as-is implementation, resulting in frustration, a crippled user experience, or a limited user experience. But what if we could extend the functionality of Endpoint Manager? What if we could fill the gaps? To be clear, your Mac enrolls into Endpoint Manager and receives its profiles, activation lock management, file vault management, PPPC controls, etc. They receive it all from that end. When we look at features like application deployment, configuration management, complex installers, self-healing, high-efficient use of the network bandwidth, you'll soon discover that Endpoint Manager has its limits. I also know you can use shell scripts in Endpoint Manager for the Mac, and that's exactly what we will use just to install the FileWave client. When you dive into the FileWave preferences, you will have the option to upload your own custom client. Well, that PKG is then accessible over HTTPS on the FileWave server. We can create a simple shell script that downloads and runs the installer, and we are basically set and ready to go. Obviously, we want to use the advanced FileWave features with as little as manual effort as needed. So why don't we put our new client into some FileWave groups right from Endpoint Manager? Custom fields and smart groups are what you need here. In the shell script, just write a certain value to a file on the file system of that client. In FileWave, we can use a client script to grab that value and store it into a custom field. From that point on, you can use smart groups to define or scope your deployments or assignments or whatever they might be called now or in the future. Let's have a closer look at what happens exactly on which side of the story. Your devices, they come from Apple Business or Apple School Manager, and they enroll into the MDM via DEP or Automated Device Enrollment, as it's called today. From the Endpoint Manager side, you can specify conditional access policies like you don't have access to the environment until full disk encryption is enabled, and so on. Configuration profiles, PPPC controls, and all that kind of stuff, it needs to go through the MDM connection. And since the device is MDM enrolled in Endpoint Manager, this is where those profiles live. Finally, we send one script that kicks off the FileWave client installation and write the value for the custom field for later pickup. When the device arrives in FileWave, then we can start with the real job. Complex installers with self-healing functionality, they are downloaded from the boosters to reduce network traffic, seriously improving download and installation times. Scripting, variables, kiosk or self-service installs, they are all kicked from the FileWave side. And of course, we can use the extreme flexibility provided by FileWave. Reports, queries, and custom fields, they are all populated with data live from our client fleet. Just to be clear, I'm not promoting the necessity of Endpoint Manager, but when politics come into play and you are forced, you no longer have to be limited. When I talked about user experience earlier, always keep in mind that providing the best possible user experience for your colleagues is or should be your core focus. It's up to us to put the right technology into their hands and make sure that using that technology is as pain-free and frictionless as possible. And we all know or have experienced a tension field between cybersecurity and user experience. When we have a look at how we can provide the needed software to our beloved colleagues or customers, we see different possibilities and different challenges. Let's have a look at a very typical scenario where different departments have different needs in terms of their toolbox. We see 3 departments using more or less the same tools. For the production department, we know that they heavily rely on certain plugins or scripts and automation tools. Installing updates for those tools always require extensive testing just to make sure that everything stays operational. In another department, exactly the same tools are used, but much more freely. This department is much more creative, and holding back new features or possibilities seriously limits their creativity. This department wants updates to be installed as soon as possible, while the first department, the production unit, wants to delay updates until functional testing is completed. For other tools, shared across all departments, updates are released on a much higher frequency. In most cases, those updates are security related, so we want them to be processed and applied as soon as possible. As FileWave admins, we know we can use different types of file sets. We can shoot the installer, like a PKG or a MSI on a Windows machine or PKG on a Mac, and hope for the best. The quality of the installer is not in our hands. And we don't always know how the application handles updates. Are we able to install it at the login window? Do we have to be or need to be admin to apply updates? Is installing the application enough? Or do we want to apply certain configuration or parameterization to the application? Well, we all know what to do in that case, and that's to build the file set manually or using file set matching. Building such file sets require a certain skill level and can be time consuming. That's why you should always build them from code instead of manually. This ensures quality and consistency. But what if there would be something in between building the installer or building the file set and just shooting the installer? Well, since the last couple of years, we at Allington started to implement what we now call auto apps. In my story, we are talking about the Mac, but the logic can be applied to Windows as well. Let's start with why. Well, aren't we all lazy? No, just kidding. Some applications, they really benefit from immediate updates. Think about Chrome, Firefox, Adobe Reader, and so on. These are all applications with very frequent updates, which are often security related. Instead of frequently starting the update engines from our side, why not make use of some client-side logic to process and apply those updates? It also reduces the network traffic towards the FileWave server, which can be beneficial in homework or VPN scenarios. Although we are quite sure that a connected client is and stays up to date, don't always take anything for granted. Don't take anything for granted. Better safe than sorry. So please monitor the results using tools like Microsoft Defender or SentinelOne, or maybe why not use FileWave? Defender or SentinelOne, they throw some extra data or insight into the mix, but they aren't free to use. And since you have your FileWave licenses. FileWave inventory or queries or reports, as we call them today, they provide an insight in which applications and respective versions are active in your clients, and of course, who or which devices require your attention when they stay behind. The logic we use is quite simple and can easily be adapted for your own use. We use three types of scripts per software title, and downloads are done over HTTPS, the software downloads, not the file set, obviously. This way, we can benefit from built-in security functionality like Gatekeeper and Xprotect or third-party antivirus solutions. We compare the installed version with the available version and act based on the result of that comparison. We also check for certificates found in the installer, and these should provide an exact match with what we expect before any installation can take place. Per software title, we created 3 scripts and we put them into one file set. The first one is the install script, which runs as an activation script. It fetches the installer from a known location and knows how to handle the different types of installers we can expect. PKGs, zip files, DMGs, apps in zips, apps in DMGs, and so on. The install script then checks for a developer certificate and compares it to a known value. If that's okay, we process the installer and we are done. The second script, well, it is a little bit more complicated and is used to process the updates of the application. This script lives in our file set as a verification script. It runs by default every 24 hours and after every reboot. It compares the installed version of an application with the available version. If there is an exact match, we exit the script and we're done. If not, we continue our evaluations. We download the installer and process it depending on the type, DMG, PKG, and so on. Again, over the next step is checking the developer certificate. And again, we compare it against what we expect. Next, we check if the application is running. If so, we mark it as such, and we display a simple dialog where the user can choose if they want to close the app and allow us to apply updates, or if they want to update at a later time. If they choose the process to update, we close the app, process the update, and relaunch the updated application. If they asked for a delay, we wait for 1 hour and display the dialog again. The third script in the file set is a post-uninstall script, and that removes the application and unloads launch daemons or launch agents or whatever is needed. The simple rm-rf does the trick. These auto apps, they can be assigned and deployed to clients using simple associations, or they can be provided as a kiosk association. It's whatever you desire. Using these scripts or comparable logic, we can deploy updates much faster and with minimal effort from both the end user and the administrator. I have some anonymized data here to prove this from a real-life implementation. On day 1, version 2 of the application is released. So everyone is using version 1, version 2 is released on that day. Depending on when the FileWave verify of each device takes place, we see that around 10 to 15% of our fleet already applied the update. The second day, that percentage has already grown to 80% or 85%. And on day 3, nearly every device is updated. On day 4, again, an update is released by the vendor, and again, we are seeing very high adoption speeds. Our colleagues from the security department are happy, and we can focus on that single one client that stayed behind. Albeit this can be very useful in several scenarios, some remarks or considerations. Scripts require maintenance, since download locations might change or other changes are implemented directly by the vendor or the developer of the software. FileWave self-healing is somehow limited when we use auto apps. However, removing the app and running a verify will reinstall it from default, and the app will reinstall the default app. Whatever happens inside the application bundle is unknown to FileWave and cannot be evaluated for self-healing. Finding and maintaining the correct download locations sometimes can be tricky. And when a developer releases an update, well, that update is applied within a 24-hour time frame. You don't have exact control over the moment it hits your clients, but in most cases, that's just fine. If you want, you can still cache the installers on a web server. That way, you'll have a little bit more control over the timing of the installation, or you can hold back updates until validation is completed, when that should be a requirement for your environment, obviously. That concludes my 2 stories. I really hope you can use it for your own inspiration, and if you get stuck or need some help, that's what we do for a living. Feel free to reach out via one of the following channels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manu. Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting, both stories, both sides. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, get in touch with him. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, for your effort.
And chime in there, Andreas, if I could, real quick.
Yeah.
I think that was just a really cool application of the available tool sets in FileWave to do something that just out of the box it doesn't do, right? And that was really neat, the way that you've put that together and used those tools. And I think even as we go more into the web, you're going to probably find that those API calls are going to be especially helpful too in these kinds of things. So I just thought that was really well done. I just wanted to say thank you as well.
Cool.